My name is Lily, and I've had hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, for years. I finally found some relief since taking Cosentyx. Relief means I can show up more.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
You know how we all have that one friend we go to with all our financial questions? Well, meet Experian, your BFF, as in big financial friend. Experian is going to be your go-to app when it comes to taking control of your finances. Experian could help you save, let you check your FICO score, and matches you with credit cards. Just download the Experian app today for free. Trust me, you need this big financial friend. Based on FICO Score 8 model, offers and approval not guaranteed. Terms apply. Offers not available in all states. See Experian.com for details.
Coming up on this episode of the Mario Rosenstock Podcast.
One of the traders was saying, no, the first rule of taco is you don't say taco, because of course then it nullifies itself.
Yeah.
Once you say Trump always chickens out, Trump is going to not chicken out, and then your whole theory kind of falls apart. But I actually think this is true. I mean, this is the level of madness and absurdity we're at, that actually the mockery will have a bigger effect on his behavior than any kind of rational critique by, 100 Nobel Prize winning economists,
So, as I mentioned last week, when Fintan O'Toole and I sit down to record an interview, it is never a short conversation. He has so much to say, it's all so well thought out and interesting, and I'm here for all of it. So on this episode, we're bringing you the second part of my chat with Fintan O'Toole that I recorded a couple of weeks ago. Fintan has spent a long time and a lot of time in the United States, including a few years as a visiting professor in Princeton University. So he has lots to say about American culture and politics, which we get into on this episode. We also chat about Brexit and UK politics, the state of modern journalism, and covering the culture wars. What does retirement look like for Fintan? Clue, he'll be busier than ever. And if he's going to be throwing his hat into the ring for Aras on Uachtaráin.
I read and greatly enjoyed, much to my surprise, Stormy Daniels' memoir, which is actually really good. I really recommend it, But one thing she says in that, which is really interesting, she says, I understood Trump because his audience and my audience were exactly the same.
That's right.
One of the things she understood was that for it to get out that Trump had screwed a porn star wasn't going to finish his political career. It was like, he screwed, wow, I wish I'd done that. I agree with you about the fundamentals of human nature. We're social beings, we're pack animals, we live together, we die together. We have to tell stories that bring us together. The great problem of the left is that it stopped telling stories, and it stopped telling stories about equality.
This week in the Sunday Independent, Fintan O'Toole's financial corruption exposed.
Yeah, my aunt's backer account and all that will come out.
He did it all. No wonder he was able to write about it so well. He was fucking running the whole thing. Taco O'Toole. You're in for another treat on this episode, folks. Part 2 of my chat with Fintan O'Toole coming right up. But as you can imagine, lots of people listened to part 1 of our chat last week, and we got a lot of interesting messages on the Mario Rosenstock Podcast hotline. Listen in. Hi, you've reached the Mario Rosenstock Podcast. Please leave a message.
How are you, Mario? It's Bertie Ahern here. I'm enjoying the podcast with Fintan O'Toole. Fintan, you really left me hanging last week. I was dying to hear about whether you'll be making a run for the presidency or not. Well, actually, it's not just me. Let's just say that I've a few potential backers that are holding off on writing the checks until they know who I'm up against. We should meet up for a chat, maybe up in the snug up in the Cat and Cage in Drumcondra. I've seen you in there a couple of times. We might be able to strike out some sort of a late night deal where I get to move into the Aras, and you get a few shillings to scribble away and pontificate and waffle about the arts and culture and whatnot. This is Donald J. Trump. Heard last week, poor show, below par. O'Toole is a low IQ individual, nasty man, vicious. Never welcome back to Princeton again. I'm putting a tariff on Princeton. Nobody's allowed in. No foreign professors, no foreign students. Calls himself an intellectual, yet he says he enjoyed Stormy Daniels' book. She's a harpy who can't write. Nasty woman. Both of them should read The Art of the Deal, greatest book of all time after the Bible. Maybe not, maybe. They say it's as good as the Bible. Deuteronomy, Leviticus, all those great chapters. They want to enjoy some proper intellectual prose from the greatest writer of the 21st century. Thank you. This is Simon Dunphy. I'm practically throwing up here listening to the great, in inverted commas, Fintan O'Toole. I finished his book, and he describes how he was poor growing up. He doesn't know the meaning of poverty. I was poor, really dirt poor. O'Toole, he's just a wannabe pov. Good luck. Hello there, it's Ivan Yates here.
And Matt Cooper.
From the Path to Power podcast. I
podcast.
must say I take exception with Fintan
Why?
and his derogatory comments, Matt, about the far right.
Come on.
I don't think there's anything wrong with them at all. Right?
They're wrong.
Wrong.
Right. Well, you don't know what you're talking about. Shut your hole.
An exclusive new comedy every week on my podcast. And you can reach me directly, Mario Rosenstock at gmail.com. Whatever ails you, whatever concerns you, some constructive criticism, ideas for guests that you might like to see or hear on the podcast, ideas for sketches or new characters that you might like to see me perform. If you want to come and see me in concert, on stage, I'm back in autumn at the Gaiety Theatre, 3 nights and throughout Ireland. See Ticketmaster for details. My thanks, of course, to Deluxe Bathrooms, Ireland's premium bathroom and tile retailer. If you're dreaming of a bathroom, folks, that combines luxury, functionality and style, then look, Deluxe Bathrooms have you covered, and at great prices too. And right now, they're having a summer sizzler sale. That's up to 70% off. 70% off. The sale must end on June 29th. So get in there on Europe's biggest brands of bathware, furniture, tiles, accessories, and everything else you need to create the bathroom you've been dreaming of. That's the Summer Sizzler Sale on Deluxe Bathrooms. DeluxeBathrooms.ie as well online. Sale ends June 29th. So it's time to meet my special guest on this episode, Fintan O'Toole. We got a little bit into Trump on the conversation at the end of part 1, so we're going to pick it up from there to kick off this episode. Listen, I have a couple of theories about this, and one is Gavin Riley, the journalist, was on last week, and he had a really good theory, and I thought it was spot on because I think it added something to the debate on Trump. And he says, picture Trump not as a leader, but as a content provider. So we're sick of that expression. One of the worst expressions we use in modern media, and believe me, as a member in radio station, yeah, you hate it. Like so I'm a comedian, I'm a satirist, I write, I perform, and people will call me a content creator. And of course, the snob in me and the hubris in me, of course, I'm not a content creator. But in a way, Fintan, we're all content creators. You better just get used to it. And Trump is the ultimate content creator provider. So basically, what does that mean, though? It's not so much so that it's important what he creates or provides. It's more that he just keeps providing it. Because in Gavin's world, and this is a very good point, the longer Trump keeps providing it, the more he crowds out the space for anything else to exist. It's a black hole. He creates a black hole of a lack of information. So basically, when you want to hear about Doge or the 20,000 scientists that have been cut or Harvard, nobody's listening because Trump's doing a performance routine in the Oval Office and he's ripping Cyril Ramaphosa's head off. And he's ripping Zelensky's head off in the Oval Office. He's saying, you don't have the cards. And everybody's going, this is fascinating to watch this. This is like a Victorian freak show. This is like watching the 3-armed woman. This is better. This is mad. This is blood. This is bread and circuses.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And one thing that's worth remembering, is Trump was ahead of the game here, right? So those of us who don't like him think of him as stupid, and he's not stupid, right? He has an instinctive genius for media,
for media,
how media was working. And one of the things he understood is exactly that, right? Which is content creation. I worked for a New York tabloid for a couple of years in the 1990s, and Trump was this huge celebrity figure. I mean, everybody sort of hated him in New York. Nobody really liked him, but he was everywhere. You couldn't avoid him. And I came from Ireland and said, who the fuck is this guy? Like, why is he such a figure? And it was partly to do with this. So Trump would. I worked for the Daily News, which was a slightly respectable tabloid. Right. The other one was Rupert Murdoch's one, the Post. Yeah. And the Post had a famous kind of page 6, which was a gossip, scandal page. If Trump was out of the news for any period of time, like 2 days, he would call up the page 6 gossip desk using an assumed name.
John Barron.
Giving scandal. Wait till I tell you about the latest thing about Donald Trump.
He's so hot at the moment. Everybody wants to go out with him. Madonna is queuing up.
Yeah. Oh, it didn't matter what it was, right? It was just, be there all the time. And this, what he understood is that, which politics didn't get, right? Which was, so politics thought there's people who are famous and there's people who are infamous. Right? And you can't be infamous and be a politician, that would rule you out. I mean, remember, it's not that long ago since American political candidates were just their whole career collapsed because they were found to be screwing a model or whatever, right? And Trump understands that there is no difference between fame and infamy.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, infamy might even be better because people like it more. They're more
normal. It shows them that it also shows them that they're normalized. They're like me.
Absolutely. And so once Trump broke the shame barrier, right? So what Trump did basically was to say, and he said it directly, famously, of course, he said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and, it's not going to make any difference to my followers. And so he got it from WWF, the wrestling. I thought it was very interesting. I read and greatly enjoyed, much to my surprise, Stormy Daniels' memoir, which is actually really good. I really recommend it, But one thing she says in that, which is really interesting, she says, I understood Trump because his audience and my audience were exactly the same.
That's right.
And one of the things she understood was that actually for it to get out that Trump had, to use the vernacular, screwed a porn star, right, wasn't going to finish his political career. It was like, he screwed, wow, I wish I'd done that,
Yeah.
So he's operated in that world of popular culture, of porn, of scandal, of wrestling, of making up TV shows like playing.
Yeah, Berlusconi kind of did that as well. I mean, Berlusconi was bunga bunga and everything, and he was very outre about all that. He was very up to the front about that. But you say something there, and I want to try and. You said something about comedy, which I thought was interesting, right? And I want to just address that. And that is, and it's just a theory I have, right? I think comedy is still his greatest nemesis. And I'll tell you why. If you want to be a true despot, one, you've got to take out the dissident thought. But two, you've got to take out the being laughed at. And one thing that shows me, particularly on this week of all weeks that we're talking Fintan, is TACO. Trump always chickens out. That is one of the biggest hitting virals that they have seen since 2016 because it's hit the nail on the head. And it's hit the nail on the head because it diminishes him in that way that only a despot can be kind of the puffery have brought out. He's a fucking taco. A taco, one of the cheapest meals you can get. And it's an immigrant meal as well. It's a Mexican meal. And we can all get it, And I loved even more. Do you know what they called Carolina Leavitt?
No.
Oh, you don't? Listen to this. You'll laugh. They call her Taco Bell. Okay? Brilliant. So everything is taco, man, because it's macho man song and all this sort of stuff. So this diminishes him. And don't forget, when Putin got to power 20 years plus ago in Russia. A friend of mine, Johnny O'Reilly, who's lived off and on in Russia and has done a lot of journalism, and he's in Kiev at the moment. And he said one of the first things Putin did was take out the spitting image in the Russian spitting image. That had to go because they used to have a Putin puppet. And really, that was priority. Take out the puppet because it can't have a Putin puppet. And I think what's going to be interesting, and it'll be really interesting if we see this, if he goes after the satire. Yeah. In some way. Now, we see that he's indirectly doing it. He's trying to affect, who's on who's, paramount takeovers of certain conglomerates and all this sort of stuff. But it will be interesting to see if he tries to eliminate the laughter at him.
Yes. So he doesn't mind insult in the big sense. I think you're absolutely right about this. So he loves it when people hate him, because that's part of the game. The polarization is critical to this, right? So you have to have the lovers, the haters and losers, or the other side, they're kind of intertwined, but absolutely can't take mockery, like mockery which diminishes him, which actually treats him as he is, and one of the fascinating things about the taco thing is that I think it's actually going to affect his behavior.
Because he'll do the opposite.
He will,
but this will affect it. This will affect him. This will ruin him potentially.
It will. So at the moment, because the Democrats are so pathetic, but the only thing that's really standing between America and authoritarianism are the bond markets. And I saw somebody's remarking in one of the pieces I was reading about the taco thing. One of the traders was saying, no, the first rule of taco is you don't say taco, because of course then it nullifies itself. Once you say Trump always chickens out, Trump is going to not chicken out, and then your whole theory kind of falls apart. But I actually think this is true. I mean, this is the level of madness and absurdity we're at. That actually the mockery will have a bigger effect on his behavior than any kind of rational critique by 100 Nobel Prize winning economists. But it's actually going to have the opposite effect. It's he needs to prove all of this, and you see, part of Trump's sadistic pleasure is in getting people to go along with opposite things. So one of the reasons he does this thing of, I'm putting 50% tariffs on the EU. Well, I'll pull back for a while. He gets great pleasure in watching the morning shows and watching his minions go out and justify whatever tweet or a social media post he made during the night, and then having to go on like the following morning and justify the opposite, because that's real power over people, the sadistic pleasure that he gets. We shouldn't be talking about this kind of stuff. Like the fact that this matters, this sort of, idiosyncratic idiocy of one man matters so much is fascism. Actually, that's what it is. But there's a thing, Mario, that really fascinates me, which was a guy called Chris Christie. People might remember he was
New Jersey.
Hugely successful governor of
Articulate,
New Jersey,
great debater.
A blue state, right? A Democratic state. This guy, won at a landslide.
Republican.
As Republican governor, got reelected, a landslide. Trump appointed, he tried to run for the nomination. Trump, smashed him. But Trump appointed him as the head of the transition team for his first presidency. Christie was a serious politician, spent months doing all this stuff about, this is who we're going to appoint. These are the first 100 days, the policies, how it all works, goes in. This is in Christie's book. He goes in day after the election. Trump's won the election. He goes into Trump Tower with 48 ring binders of stuff, right? And he walks in and Steve Bannon comes out and says, he's too busy to see you. That stuff. He calls the guy and says, get that in the dumpster. Throw it in the dumpster, right? They literally take all the stuff, throw in the dumpster. Why? Just to show, it's just to show him. Just, it's pure sadistic
humiliation and cruelty.
You think you're a big guy, I'm a bigger guy.
Yeah, also this thing, he used to do this with his employees as well. One of the famous MOs of Trump's executive behavior was he would employ people on the basis of how much they would fight with each other. Because the more they're fighting with each other, he can come out on... His minions fight with each other. They fight like dogs, and he'd laugh and watch them roll around on the floor almost. Almost like that. Just almost brings me back to almost like watching Mandingo fighting in Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained almost.
Yeah, and it is sadistic. I mean, he is a sadist in that sense. He your real sense of power, is in watching people humiliate themselves for you, and then, but this is one of his weaknesses, right? So I think why he's going to find it hard to sustain everything is that the successful dictators, I mean, even Hitler, Mussolini, whatever, they do share power. Yes, it's the cult. Yes, it's the big thing. But there's a whole network of minions, of hangers-on, of people who do actually get rewarded, right? They get a lot of power. They get a lot of money. They rise in status. And Trump is useless at that second bit, right? He's so egotistical. You look at the people who have sacrificed themselves for him. Take Rudy Giuliani as an example.
Everybody's destroyed.
I mean. Giuliani's ended up as a pathetic figure, broke, laughed at. And I mean, Giuliani was like a major figure. Like he was a huge kind of world figure. Now he's this pitiful person. Guys have gone to jail, like Peter Navarro, who's his bonkers economic advisor. I mean, he spent 4 months in jail.
And his chief accountant.
Yeah. So this is, I think, Trump's weakness is that he's not good at building this kind of stable network of hangers-on.
He's a in galactical. Brian Cox was here telling me in galactical terms, he's a kind of a supernova that can turn to a giant dwarf. A giant dwarf. I'm a giant dwarf. He eats himself until eventually it kind of implodes. And so
yes.
What you're suggesting is it's possibly a law of diminishing returns, that it just gets
very much so.
That
he uses people up.
How far can you do?
It's happened already with Musk. I mean, look at the Musk thing already.
Yeah.
I mean, we all knew that was going to happen. But how quickly that happens, and he just can't bear the idea of anybody else with any kind of ego, being there.
One question I have for you regarding Trump, because I'm going to bring the Trump thing to an end now, because I really enjoyed that now, and it's not always easy to extract a little bit more out of the thing of Trump, but I think we did manage to extract a little bit. The one thing I want to ask you about Trump is, and this is from sort of one of your takes, and that's he portrays himself in America as the victim, and this is a self-pitying thing. And Bill Maher, for example, the comedian since 2015, has been, used to make a point of calling him, he's a whiny little bitch, and making sure we use the B word. He's a whiny little bitch, because that's what he is. He likes to whine and complain and say, "Oh, poor me," and this is his thing, the politics of self-pity, I think you called it there. When everything was great in America, and let's make America great again. My kind of question has a natural logic to it, though. When does America become great, and when do you stop saying everything's shit?
I mean, this stuff, again, the line between comedy and satire on the one side and reality on the other is very, very thin, isn't it? And we've seen this, and it's not just Trump. This is the whole far right, right? Is based on self-pity, right? So, and self-pity might seem to be like this sort of very, minor emotion, but actually, it's a very potent one. Because what self-pity does is it's based on the fact that I deserve more, right? It's fundamentally about entitlement.
England,
Well, look at England.
This is what I'm thinking. Farage.
But if you've been the empire, if you've been the greatest nation in the world in terms of basically running half of it, and then you're just a perfectly normal, prosperous country, that then starts to feel like somebody has done something to you which is really unforgivable and horrible. And it's like if you're like 99% of us, like you or me, and if you get on a plane, you turn right, But if you always turn left and then something happens, there's some screw up and you don't get your business class seat and you have to go down and sit in the economy class. And you're going to sit on that journey just seizing with rage and self-pity and hatred of everybody. And that mentality is capable of, the thing is that everybody can feel self-pity, right? So men can feel, these bloody women coming along, taking away our sense of entitlements. Straight people can feel about gay people. They can, of course, race, particularly in America, these bloody people coming along. the very fact that I'm not superior to these people anymore officially, it is a sort of an assault on my sense of what I'm worth. So self-pity is kind of infinitely extendable, and what it does is it takes the basis of democracy is compassion, right?
Yep.
At some basic level, right? It's not pity for each other. We feel a sympathy for each other, right?
Well, first of all, there's a tacit agreement that for just a second, I will shut up and you will have a say. And ultimately, you will be one of the final arbiters in how we are going to be led, as will I. And so there is an agreement between us, a mutually shared compassion.
And it's underpinned by some sense of fellow feeling, we might call it, right? That we sort of belong to each other, we belong together. We might sort of hate each other from time to time, but we have some underlying sense of being in it together. And what this self-pity thing is, it takes that very positive necessity for democracy and distorts it, turns it inward, right? Because self-pity is always then about what they are doing to me.
It's completely narcissistic. It's ultimately inward looking. Yeah.
And the brilliant thing about it is that if you take the example of the plane, right, it's completely free floating from any objective circumstances. Right? It's not about whether you're actually oppressed or not, right? Or whether, your life is shit. Some people's lives are shit, but that's not the issue. The issue is what you feel entitled to. So you can have 6 yachts and feel raging self-pity because, Roman Abramovich has a bigger one. Or it doesn't matter what it is. There's always some way of feeling sorry for yourself, And the far right is sort of mobilizing this whole thing. It's effective. It sort of, people do wallow in it. And the last thing about it is that you can satisfy your self-pity ultimately by, it doesn't matter if you do something that hurts everybody, so long as it hurts them more than you.
Yeah.
So even if objectively, say you vote for Brexit and, you got what you wanted and it's hurting you, you can still feel, but those urban elites, who didn't want it, they're even more upset than I am. So that's okay.
Pyrrhic victory.
My name is Lily, and I've had hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, for years. I finally found some relief since taking Cosentyx. Relief means I can show up more.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
You know how we all have that one friend we go to with all our financial questions? Well, meet Experian, your BFF, as in big financial friend. Experian is going to be your go-to app when it comes to taking control of your finances. Experian could help you save, let you check your FICO score, and matches you with credit cards. Just download the Experian app today for free. Trust me, you need this big financial friend. Based on FICO Score 8 model, offers and approval not guaranteed. Terms apply. Offers not available in all states. See Experian.com for details.
Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Right now, get a free select tool when you buy the Craftsman V20 2-pack battery kit. Whether it's the backyard, the bathroom, or beyond, Craftsman has the tools to help you power through and get the project done right. Because DIYing is unpredictable, but your tools shouldn't be. Shop Craftsman at Lowe's today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
There's also, I suppose, they often talk about a sunk cost fallacy in relation to this. People who, for example, know in their heart of hearts that Brexit has been an absolute feckin' disaster, They can't admit it because they then will be throwing away their investment, which is the money they invested. So what they must do is double down and go, oh, fucking hell, if we just did Brexit a little bit harder, then we can get it done. And they want to go harder and harder. They want a tougher Brexit, a bigger Brexit. They want a fatter Brexit. They want a cleaner Brexit. And then, they're doubling down rather than admit what's in front of their very eyes. Like in relation to Britain, no growth in 14 years of complete and utter stasis under the Conservatives, absolutely made worse by the, hematoma inflicted on them by Brexit, and then added to that by, COVID and everything. And all absolutely dreadful. I want to move on to the final question. And that is, as in your experience as a journalist, having to constantly look over things and review things and look at trends and everything, and I suppose the pendulum of history. I'm thinking of the pendulum of the culture wars in the last 10 years and how they've swung from left to right so violently. But in a more generalistic way with your journalism, do you see things in pendular form at all, that through your years as you get older you go, here we go again, left, right, up, down, white, black, recession, boom, bust, panic, fear, relaxation, hubris, panic, hubris, panic. Do you see it in those terms, or is that too simplistic, or have you thought about that subject?
I do think about it a lot. Maybe it's just getting old, but the one thing we know, right, is that we know shag all about the future, right? The more you look at history, things don't go in straight lines. The mistake is made over and over and over and over again, which is everybody extrapolates from the present, right, from current trends, and says, if this continues this way, this is where we're going to end up, right? And you see it with the AI stuff at the moment, where I'm very skeptical about a lot of this stuff, because we've heard it all before. And, it's not that it's not real. It's not that we shouldn't take it seriously. But, the idea that all these things just kind of go in a straight line never really turns out to be the case. Yeah. So, of course, it is. I mean, that old Marxist idea of, of dialectics, you have a force, you have a counter force, and then you get some kind of new synthesis of that, and then you get a counter to that. That's really probably the way history really does work. So I'm not entirely pessimistic about the moment, because there will be reactions against these things, and there are already kind of great movements, I think, beginning to emerge. And however, the other thing is that, some things do get better. It's sometimes hard to keep your head in that space. You at the risk of kind of being namby-pamby and clapping hands and saying everything is just great. But, life for LGBTQ people, for example, is incomparably better, in most democracies than it was 20, 30 years ago. A lot of what we're seeing now is a reaction against real progress, right? A lot of the open misogyny that you're seeing in a lot of these right-wing movements is a reaction against the fact that actually women are, doing very well in certain ways.
You could argue that the reaction is a demonstration of how far certain things have come, that it's a panicking.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. A lot of the panic, I did teach in America for 12 years, and one of the great things is the institution I taught in Princeton, very wealthy, knobby institution, but they did a thing, around about 2010, 2012 maybe, where they just opened it up to, they just said, look, we're not going to ask you about money. If we let you in, and we pay for everything if you don't have the money, right? And you could see, even in a couple of years I was there, there were young people getting into an institution like that who would never have been able to go there because they couldn't pay. And they were fantastic, They would fill you with hope, And they were white kids from places in Ohio, or whatever, where they were marginalized and never really got opportunities before. They were black kids from urban America. They were, Chinese kids. They were, And you just see the natural human potential, actually, which is that when you actually give people opportunities, they're amazing. If you want to cheer yourself up, and God knows we need a bit of it, but go into any primary school in Ireland, just go in for an hour, talk to kids. They're bloody brilliant, you know. They're absolutely fantastic. They are multicultural. They take that completely for granted now, you know. They're extraordinarily, in my experience, extraordinarily articulate, extraordinarily smart. I was doing a project a few years ago. we were doing a thing in a primary school in inner city Dublin, and there were two government ministers, whom I won't name, I'll spare them, but they were primary school kids, and I was asking one of the kids, what would you like to be when you grow up? And she said, well, I thought I was going to be a journalist, but I was looking at those politicians, and I said to myself, I think she was 12, so I said to myself, well, if they're the people who can get to be government ministers, I can definitely do that. There is a sense of possibility and of confidence. And maybe it's just, I remember my own childhood where we had the shit kicked out of us, where we were ashamed, where we were afraid, you know. And again, I'm not saying there's all sorts of other things with social media and everything else that, really difficult for kids. But you know, things can get better and people can live better lives. Life expectancy in Ireland now is 20 years longer than it was when I was growing up. But that's 20 years of extra life. I'm 67. I have a decent chance, you know, of living into my 80s.
Yeah, I know.
My parents lived into their 80s. That's years people never had.
That's another 14 books just there.
I don't think I would inflict that on the world, or else somebody would come and bump me off if I tried to do that. I
suppose I appreciate those comments, and that's nice. The thing I would just wonder is, well, two things. That sometimes in a society like, for example, America or a first world society, when bad things are happening, sometimes the people who must object sometimes feel they have too much to lose to raise their heads above the parapet, because they're already quite well off doing nothing. And it's the silence of the majority or the silent majority that enables evil to foment, you know. So it's good people mustn't be quiet. Good people must say something. But people are good, and I have great faith in the goodness of people. The other one is that I don't know. You're aware of a kind of an economist, philosophical economist called Rutger Bregman. I'd say you are. And Rutger is the guy who discovered, said to Davos, "Why aren't you guys paying tax? This is the big question in the room, yeah." And then he went viral for that. But really, his studies revolve about how it's actually wired into human DNA to help each other, to be good to each other. We are community creatures. We are creatures that inherently understand that what's good for you will probably be good for me. And this is who we are. We're not Trumps. We're not J.D. Vances. We're not anti-intellects. And we're not sort of, wanting to crush minorities and crush people and be cruel to people and sadists. This isn't really who human beings are, it turns out.
No, you have to go to a lot of trouble to get people into the mindset, you know, where they will start blaming, whatever group, for their own problems. And you have to convince them of two things. One is you have to convince them that they're powerless. You know, and that they can only therefore get some power through associating themselves with this biggest bully in the room, you know, and they go to a lot of trouble to make people feel powerless, you know, and people aren't powerless, actually. You know, collectively, people have still, you know, in spite of everything, you know, still have an immense amount of power to change things. And the other thing that we see all the time is that if you try to address people where they are, I was talking recently, it was a really interesting example, right? A wonderful woman who's the head of the union in America that organizes the cabin staff on air crews, right? She's fantastic. Oh my God, what a fighter, you know. But she was telling me about, there was a big attack on the pensions, right? So there was United, which is the biggest American airline, was trying to kind of basically get rid of the pension schemes. And she said there was a real problem for some of the younger members, you know, because they just didn't get it. Like, why is this important, you know, and all that sort of stuff, right? And she was, you know, they were going around, you know, shouting at them, saying, "How, you know, why are you stupid? You don't understand how important pension is." And then they started listening to them, right? And then listening to them, they said, "What's your big issue?" And they said, "Well, the big issue is high heels." What? we're being made to wear high heels. And this was okay when we were working an 8-hour day, and now they're making us do 10-hour shifts. And if you're in high heels for 10 hours, the pain is terrible and you're ruining and we're really feeling this, right? And instead of, she was telling me, it just kind of penny dropped, right? Instead of saying, are you stupid that you think about high heels rather than pensions? She said, okay, what's the issue with high heels? And okay, that's the issue, right? And then they issued an instruction the following day saying, turn up in flat shoes. And if they want to fly, if they want to send you home and they don't want any of their planes to fly, because you're in flat shoes, fine. Let's see how that goes. And of course, what happened was they all turned up in flat shoes, and the airline said, oh shit, oh well, okay, you can have flat shoes. And then the people would listen about pensions.
Aha.
Oh, we can do things. We can do things. Yeah. We have power. We can force them to listen to us. We can force them to treat us as dignified human beings. And so this is history. Like throughout history, people have had to fight for everything, and it's only when people start taking it all for granted and thinking, I'm entitled to this and it's always been the case, that then they come and try and take it away from you. And so, but I agree with you about the fundamentals of human nature. We're social beings. We're pack animals. We live together. We die together. We have to tell stories that bring us together. The great problem of the left, is that it stopped telling stories. It stopped telling stories about equality. Or it's kind of made equality into sort of sectionalized things about things. Economic equality is still the absolute basis for a decent society.
Yeah, it is. It's Bernie's basically message and AOC's message, except they are in that society. They are painted as Lenin and Trotskyites, Marxist kind of people. Because in Ireland they'd be regarded as just probably Fine Gael. They'd be righter than Labour, or Labour would be. It would be. Listen, thanks a million. What's your next book?
The official biography of Seamus Heaney.
Ooh, okay.
Will be.
How far are you through that?
Hopefully I'll finish it next year. I'm a long way into it, so I'm hoping to finish it next year. And
cool. An official biography of Seamus Heaney. Yeah. And anything else planned?
Well, I've actually been working on a short book. I'm just looking at proofs of it. It's kind of interesting one, I think. Myself and Sam McBride, you probably know Sam, the terrific Belfast-based journalist. Yeah. We've just done a little book for the Royal Irish Academy, which is about the case for and against United Ireland.
Okay.
And instead of doing, Sam, who's from a unionist background, does the case against and I do the case for, we've both done the case for and against.
Very good.
So we both tried to say, okay, let's put aside our prejudices about this sort of stuff and try as well as we can. Of course, we're, all sorts of unconscious biases, but try as well as you can to say, look, everybody talks about this stuff, but what does it mean? Let's each try to make as good a case for it and as good a case against it as we possibly can. And actually, I think it's kind of an interesting thing to have done, and I hope that will kind of maybe feed into some sort of problem.
And is this going to come out before or after you become Irish president?
Well, it'll be a long time before, since the latter is never going to happen. So,
but how did you feel? You did say that you wouldn't rule it out completely. That if you were, I presume somebody was asking you if you were asked and pushed, you would be flattered. And of course, what else would you say?
Yeah, the Sunday Independent rang me up about it and said, well, would you rule it out? And I mean, what citizen would say, no, I wouldn't want to be president of my country, of course. Yeah. But it's...
The gas of Fianna Fáil asked you. After all these years,
wouldn't it be great?
After all the haughey and after all the Bertie.
Well, I would turn around, and I'd take all the money and I'd just say, I'd be really sorry about all those terrible things I said.
This week in the Sunday Independent, Fintan O'Toole's financial corruption exposed. Oh God, hilarious!
My aunt's backer account and all that will come out.
He did it all. No wonder he was able to write about it so well. He was fucking running the whole thing. Oh, brilliant. Taco O'Toole. Listen, Patrick's going to be raging because once more, the last time you were on, you spent about 2 hours with me and we got two amazing pieces of audio out of it. And listen, I want to thank you again for not only taking the time, but it takes energy to kind of engage, in these conversations. And I really think you're great. And thank you so much for doing it, Fintan.
Well, you're very easy to engage with, and I love the conversation.
No, I
Thank
really
you.
love it, and I could listen to you all day, and you know, continued health and success, and you know, I want to be reading your stuff for, you know, well into your 80s, as you say, you know. Yeah, and listen, I'll see you in 2 years for another go. And my thanks, as always, to the great Fintan O'Toole for sharing his time with me and his interesting observations, as always, about the world around us. My thanks to you for listening. Tell one other person about this podcast if you can. My thanks to Deluxe Bathrooms for being such a great sponsor to us and getting involved in the whole podcast world. Thank you, Martin, and everybody in Deluxe. And we'll see you same time, folks, same place next week. Bye-bye.